I'm Claire Patterson. I'm a data protection consultant, trainer, author, all that good stuff. I eat, sleep and breathe data protection, and yet I very often still feel like an imposter in the world of data protection. I also specialise in the world of social housing and data protection, and I feel like an imposter in the world of housing very often as well. And a few people had mentioned that term, imposter syndrome, or imposter, or feeling like an imposter, to me in the last few weeks. And I thought, that's what we're going to talk about in August. I didn't have a speaker lined up. I usually have other people that present at the Hives now, the Hive Online. And I didn't have a speaker lined up. And I thought, this seems to be something that is really striking a chord with people. And when in May at the IRMS, so the I always forget what they're called. It's a records management organisation that have an annual conference. The RM is records management. I can't think what the I and the S are.
It's Information Records Management Society.
Thank you. Thank you, Georgina. Which brings me nicely to, I was speaking, in fact, I remember very clearly at the time that our wonderful friend who can't be here today, he's with apprentices, Scott Salmons, who you might know in the data world, who's absolutely fantastic. He said to me, will you be on my panel talking about imposter syndrome? And I was like, yes. Oh, no, I'm not good enough for that. And Georgina, who's here, was also on that panel. And I felt, again, like, oh, no, I'm not good enough to speak alongside Georgina and Scott and David Smith, MBE or OBE. Oh, see, I feel bad now. Dave's popped out and come back in. I can't remember, but he's just retired from a very, very important job in the government. He was there for 40 years, and he was still talking about that he feels like an imposter syndrome, and that he struggles with imposter syndrome. Even at that stage in his career, he was a few months from retiring and had been there for 40 years and was like the go-to person for knowledge and information management. So to be sitting alongside him, I felt like an imposter, and yeah, the whole thing. But what was amazing was how many people came to that session. I think you agree, Georgie, we were quite surprised that so many people came, because we were up against some really big names in the data protection world who were on at the same time. But people just feel like imposters. We all have this feeling of being an imposter. In fact, would you put your hand up if you have never felt like an imposter in your job or a previous job or any job? Anybody? I'm not. Oh, I am. Oh, Tony, you've got a hand up. Do you not ever feel imposter syndrome? Have you never felt it?
No.
Well, you must tell us your secrets.
Go in. Well, because I work on contract. So I go in and say, well, you've hired me to do something, so I'll get on and do it. I'm not being an imposter at all.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And there's so much to be said for that, that you are so aware of what your abilities are and what you've been hired for those abilities, and you put them to use.
Yeah.
So one of the things, okay, I'm going to start. I am all over the place. As I said, this is going to be even more informal than usual. I'll let Dave speak and then I'll start properly with what I wanted to say. Go on, Dave.
Well, what I was going to ask you, Claire, was I think I've been an imposter on occasions, but what is it worthwhile somebody or yourself trying to, because we probably all have a different view on what an imposter is.
That's what I was going to,
Is it, for example, somebody feeling undervalued? Is it perhaps somebody feeling Oh, my system cut out there. Is it somebody feeling that they're not as good as somebody else?
Yeah. So that's a really good point.
Think imposter syndrome is.
Yeah, really, really good point. And there are different views on it. So that's what I was going to start with. And yeah, so I said it's going to be more informal than usual. It's really informal. I am feeling extra impostery today, which I will define in a moment, Dave, because I'm completely unprepared for this. Or underprepared, not completely unprepared. I'm underprepared because my plans have gone completely awry this week because my mum has ended up in hospital. So I'm just, my head's all over the place. She's going to be okay, but it's yeah, it's a bit at the moment. So that has absolutely added to me. Why are people coming to listen to me? And I haven't got a clue, and I'm all over the place. And generally speaking, and this is kind of from, anecdotal, but also reading and all the rest of it. Loads and loads of podcasts. I'm a podcast addict, if you don't know me. That imposter syndrome is generally agreed as when you feel you shouldn't have been entrusted with the role that you've been given, that you are going to be found out anytime now as not actually being the right person or good enough. We've got hang on, let me get into the chat. Somebody's put, so it's that kind of feeling of, they think I'm good at this, but I'm really not that good at it. And any minute I'm going to be found out. I'm going to have my mask taken off, Scooby-Doo style. And, it was you all along, you rubbish person, and you were just pretending to be a good person. It is about being found out. Oh, this is interesting. So a classic example is experts know what they don't know, and they know they cannot know everything. And it is about being found out. So that kind of inverts it. I love that. And that's one of the things I was going to talk about today. Where my mind goes when I think about imposter syndrome, and when I'm feeling that lack of confidence, I have to remind myself that it is absolutely okay to not know everything. And that it is not expected that I know everything. It's only me putting pressure on myself that I should know absolutely everything to do with data protection and everything related all the time off the top of my head. But do I hold other people to that standard? No. Do I expect anyone that I go to for expert advice, whether that's in my field or outside of my field, to know absolutely everything about everything off the top of their heads? No. And I actually don't always trust when somebody does just seem to know it off the top of their head all the time. And they never go, I'm just going to check that. Because, well, maybe you have misremembered. What I really wanted to bring up that is really, really interesting, though, in this world that, this week has just been horrendous in the UK, and is just important in general. There's a great article, and I will share the link afterwards, in the Harvard Business Review. If I'm remembering correctly, I will check and send you the link. About how we probably need to stop going on about imposter syndrome quite as much as we do, because it can be harmful. In that, it can give the impression that there's something about the person that needs to be fixed. So if I say, in my field, in my sector that I work in, I have imposter syndrome, I feel I don't belong, I feel that I don't fit in, I feel that I'm not welcome, that it's all I, and I'm putting pressure on myself that I should be fixing myself. When actually, maybe, and I'm not saying it's the case for me, but for generally, when we have this feeling, should we go, well, is there something wrong with the sector, the field, the organisation that is making people feel unwelcome, like they don't belong, like they don't fit? Is there something underlying that if you are the only woman around a board table, have you got imposter syndrome because you need to fix something in yourself? Or have you got imposter syndrome because you're made to not feel welcome because you are the only woman around the table? And that, I think, is so valid, especially, I say, at the moment with what's going on in the UK and the people using anything and making things up as an excuse to go and attack people who are not white, British, what they expect, what these racists say that people should look like to be UK citizens. I won't go on about that any longer because we'll all just get really, really angry and carry on. Rob.
I'm fascinated listening to you because what you've talked about just in those brief time you've been talking covers a whole load of ground about imposter syndrome and how it works. To give you my background, I met Claire because I come out of legal services regulation, but alongside that I've also been a coach, so I coach people with imposter syndrome. That doesn't make me the expert, as you rightly say. No expert is really the expert, but I'm coaching predominantly doctors and consultants in the NHS, and those people hugely struggle with imposter syndrome. And the bits that have leapt out to me from doing that work and from my own experience of imposter syndrome, which I've had for many years and I've kind of finally thrown away, although every time I speak to someone like this, you get that little hint of it, don't you? But it does come quite often from within, but you're also right that it could come from external influence. So strong connection between imposter syndrome and perfectionism. So people who hold themselves to very high standards are more likely to feel like an imposter, because if they don't meet their really high standard, they think everybody else thinks that they're poor, and suddenly they're no good at their job because there's one thing they don't know. So that's just one of the things. And then there's something about us within us with different kinds of people, but people who need affirmation from other people. If you have a desperate need for that and you're not getting positive feedback from other people, suddenly you think you're terrible. It feeds imposter syndrome. So those internal things are fascinating. And I'll stop in a second, but the external things are also the cultural thing, the thing about how people behave towards you. And I see this with the doctors that I work with, particularly those who are being attacked by senior consultants because of their gender or their ethnicity. Completely undermines people who are really high flyers in capability, but they can be utterly destroyed by the behaviour of other people because their own high expectations are compounded by the behaviours of other people. So there are internal and external influences here. And the reason I'm here is because I don't know everything and I want to hear other people talk about it. But those are the things which have leapt out from what you just said. I thought, yeah, those are the things I've got down here. That's interesting. Thank you.
Rob, thank you. That is absolutely fascinating. And I knew that you were coaching. I didn't realise that there was so much NHS, that you were consultant. We think of the consultants, don't we, as these, they know everything, they're infallible, that's reassuring to know that so many of them are human enough to admit that they do need and want coaching. I think that is reassuring, but I think that's part of it. Dave, you were saying, what is the definition of imposter syndrome? There's kind of that's generally accepted as the definition, that you feel that you're going to be found out and that you're not good enough, but the causes of it are myriad. They are those internal and those external, and the internal ones, I think that's so interesting that they can be the opposite as well. It can be that it's those who you were saying, Rob, that it can be your internal standards you hold yourself to, but it can be the complete opposite as well. It can be that you need other people to tell you that you're doing a good job or that you're great or whatever. And they're like the complete opposite, but they've got the same output. That's fascinating, isn't it? That's really, really interesting. I feel like I could, just think on that for hours. I think that's so interesting. And there's no easy fix either, obviously, because it's so complex, the causes and everything, that there's no easy fix. We've got a few people, which I won't read out names, but we've got talking about the knowing that you don't know everything. Trust but verify. Check your sources, absolutely. Inspect, don't expect. I like that. I love anything that rhymes. Anyone that knows me will know I love stuff, sayings that rhyme. So inspect, don't expect is fab. And again, recognise you don't know everything, but ideally you know where and how to find the information. And I think we need to give ourselves more credit for that especially in a lot of the sectors that we are in. We're in data and housing and legal and very complex areas. You can't hold it all in your brain, but you have learned a set of skills that enable you to go and find some other information, to go and do what you need to do. And I don't think we put enough emphasis on those skills. I think we put more weight on knowledge, and we feel that knowledge is the be all and end all. And actually, anyone can find knowledge. Theoretically, it's out there, especially with the internet. We can find anything and everything. It's knowing how to find it. It's the tools and the skills that are really, really valuable, and we've all got those, and we can put all those into use. It's being able to implement being able to implement knowledge, find the knowledge, implement it, and do the right thing with it. I'm tying myself up in knots and feeling like an imposter, so I'm going to pass over to Mike.
Thanks. I don't think it matters, how much knowledge or experience you have. You always have that sense of imposter syndrome. I mean, I work in the web design industry, and I've been building and managing websites for 12 years or more. And every time I build a website, I feel that I'm not worthy enough and that I have that imposter syndrome. Even though all of my clients say it's, the work I do is really good, you still have that imposter syndrome. So I don't think it matters how much knowledge or experience you have. Something is always there that gives you that feeling of, that what you're doing, you shouldn't be there doing it.
That's crazy, because for those who don't know, Mike is my website guru and so much more, strategy and all sorts of things. And I just think he's amazing. And I think what he does is amazing, and you make it look easy. And then for you to say, no, actually, I feel like an imposter every time I do it, that's like, wow. And I think I think it helps. The more honest we are, I have to say, Georgina, when we sat next to David and he said that he had imposter, and you're like, what? It kind of helps a bit, doesn't it? Well, okay, so I'm not, because you can feel like an imposter who has imposter syndrome. I'm the only one who has imposter syndrome. No, you absolutely are not. I could see some things in the chat, but I'm going to come to Kate and Georgina and then chat.
Hi guys, so I came from I work in a school as a compliance officer at the school under the chap who's the responsible person for data protection. He's a compliance bursar, so we haven't got a DPO, but he calls himself the compliance bursar, so I'm the compliance officer. But I came across from languages teaching, where I'd got a degree in French, I'd got experience in Spanish, I knew what I was doing, I knew I was fluent in both languages, I'd lived in France, so I come from a very sort of confident position to then my line manager saying, right, I had a problem with an injury going back many years and a keyhole surgery, and I thought, right, I want something more sedentary. Approached the bursar and he said, we've got this job in data protection. Here's the reading, and it was a massive pile of legal reading. You know, read this. I'm sure you'll be fine. You know, so I spent. I mean, it was very wise. I spent the first I would say month or so just doing the background and looking into the data protection, you know, GDPR legislation and things like that, and making sure I was on top of it. So because his opinion was anybody with a degree will be able to get to the grips of the law, the legal side of it. What I found hard, and where I get my imposter syndrome, is the IT side of it. Like, I work in the IT office most of the time, and they all talk in acronyms like IMS system, API key, blah, 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 blah. And I've had to learn all these things, you know, these acronyms. And quite often they speak to each other in acronyms. And I'm like, mates, what are you talking about? I haven't got a clue.
Different language.
Different language, yeah. And it is a language, just as I've come from a language background. They speak IT, you know, so. But I'm gradually getting to grips with API keys and IMS systems, etc. You know, and then I spoke to the network manager, and I said, you know, I've contacted the ICO, I'm writing a policy, but I said, this is the first time I've ever written a policy, you know, I'm flying by the seat of my pants. And he said, that's all we ever do. And I thought that was quite telling, you know, because he's been there for 20 years and he's brilliantly capable, you know. So, and he just said, we're all just doing it, you know, to the best of our abilities, and that's all we can do at the end of the day with the knowledge we've got. And I quite frequently ring the ICO for advice. I mean, people say that's a double-edged sword, because you can get contradictory advice, but you know, I found that very helpful to just get a bit of ICO advice, and to put out to forums. I'm in an education forum for DPOs and things like that, and just put it out to them and say, what do they think about something? That's really helpful. And to come to these chats and things like that where you're building connections and etc. But yeah, I've moved sideways in education, and yeah, so I've had to retrain.
That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's yeah, it is. It's great when other people that you think have got it nailed and they go, oh, we're making it as we go along. You go, oh, okay. Georgina.
Yeah, just saying there's some great comments in the chat, but I just wanted to add to the conversation that when yourself, Claire, we were in that panel in front of those people in the IOMS conference, it was very intimidating, because those people, I don't know if you're aware, the IOMS conference, it's been going on for many more years than I can fathom. I didn't even know it existed, but then you walk into that room and these people have been in their industries, their sectors for decades, especially our esteemed colleague David, who was very, very wise, you know, I felt very much like, why am I here sitting on this panel with this very, very wise man who's very well respected in his industry and has gone to head with MPs and, you know, in Parliament, and all these amazing stories they had. And there I am, a research graduate of the Data Protection and Information Governance Practitioner Apprenticeship, thinking I'm very new. Why am I here? But I think it speaks to just having that self-confidence that if you're aware of your own bias and you're aware of your own experience levels, but just be eager to learn, then just be open about it. Say, look, I know I'm new to the industry, I'm new, but I can only be here. I can only start and learn. I need to learn from people. You need to share your experience with me, and I need to share my experience with you. We all have different perspectives, and I think that's the big thing to, as I've grown in the industry, is that actually everyone has their own perspectives and everyone has their own interpretation of something. It doesn't necessarily come with experience or being a decades of experience. It's just be confident to share that perspective, because you may challenge someone else's experience.
Absolutely, that's spot on, because fresh eyes are so important, aren't they? That, you know, just a fresh perspective, because we can get ingrained in that, well, I've been doing it this way for several years. I hate that. We've always done it this way, which is why we do it. I hate that. But that's really hard to break down when everybody's kind of just seems to be merrily going along that way. And we do need those fresh perspectives. And that comes back to the external environment as well. Are you feeling like an imposter because you're new and nobody's made you feel welcome? Nobody's made you feel, nobody's made it really explicit that, yes, you may be recently graduated, but you have got a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience and perspective and a fresh perspective and all these things, which are absolutely amazing. Has anyone made you feel like that, or have they perpetuated and maybe not explicitly kind of made you feel bad, but kind of perpetuated that? Oh, well, you know, we respect these people who've been doing it for 40 odd years, and they're the only people we respect. And you know, that's obviously not how we feel here. That's brilliant. I'm just going to come to the chat, and I've made some, I'm adding to my notes, and I think I'm going to, yes, oh, brilliant. Had a win last week dealing with a data incident. Was asked by the manager of the area concerned, should we contact our solicitor's DPO to confirm what you're saying we need to do? And I said, no, I'm more than qualified and confident to deal with the situation. And they followed my advice. Absolutely brilliant. Love it. Love it. And you, those of you who know me and know my story, I have been in that situation so many times. In fact, it's how I came to be working with Rob. Is I was in that situation where I would have some advice to give as DPO, and they would say, you need to check with the solicitors. So I would ring the solicitors and they would go, no, you're right. Okay, I could say it's fine. The solicitors say I'm right. Oh, okay, then we better take your advice. And then when I left that place, the solicitors said, you know your stuff. Would you like to come and work with us? So that's when I ended up working at the solicitors with Rob. And every single day I pinched myself, and I still do. Especially when I was picking up the phone to my former colleagues in the same desk and at the same, using the same phone number that I used to ring to get my that advice. It's just absolutely crazy. Sam, you've got a hand up. Oh, it's gone.
No,
you okay?
That's fine.
Yeah.
I did think, what would Claire do? And I thought, no, I'm going to tell him. No, absolutely not. That's definite. After the first time when I had to come and speak to him and say, I think we should do this. Am I right? So this time I stood my ground, and it felt good.
Brilliant. Because that, you know, you're in that position as well, that you do know your stuff, but they're kind of going, no, we need some backup, because people just like external people's advice more. And there's things going on there, isn't there? There's things that making you feel like an imposter, because, and I'm not blaming your managers, you know, just in general, we kind of go, oh, well, you're internal, so there's something just implied that you don't really know what you're talking about. We need an external person to tell us. And yeah, that's, I hadn't realised that. I'm thinking out loud, and that's all coming together with that thing that the Harvard Business Review article was about, that it can be external influences as well that make you feel, oh, maybe maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, because you're making me feel I don't know what I'm talking about. And that's what used to happen to me. I'm like, I'm pretty sure. And then they go, no, you need to get external advice. And every time I go, oh, I'm probably wrong, but this is what I think. And they go, no, you're right. Oh, okay. And it's this roller coaster of emotions and thinking, am I right? Am I not? I've got in the chat here, something similar happened to me when I challenged DP audit findings. I knew more than the auditor and provided them with evidence that their recommendation was wrong. Felt good. Love it. Definitely does feel good. Yeah, love it. And it's knowing that you can go and find that evidence. You don't have to have it at the top of your head. It comes back to that. We have a set of skills, without sounding like Liam Neeson in Taken. We have a particular set of skills where we can go and find the information that we need. Oh, okay, we've got an interesting question here. Is there a scale of imposter syndrome? Don't like the phrase spectrum, but wonder if you can feel less of an imposter than someone else. I don't think it's recognise mental health diagnosis. No, I don't think it's not a mental health diagnosis. It's a kind of Rob, come in here, you.
Just interested me too much, that one.
Yeah, go on.
There has to be a scale, doesn't there? Because imposter syndrome is different for all of us at different times.
Yeah.
So people have mentioned on the chat about stepping into a new role and feeling like an imposter.
Yeah.
Of course you do, because you don't know as much as you did before. So whether we call it imposter syndrome or inexperience, and therefore we will grow our experience and grow more confidence in the role, there's that end of it which is perfectly natural. Yeah. There's the other end of it, which is extreme imposter syndrome, which is also perfectly natural because it's what we're doing to ourselves, but actually recognizing that that's what we're doing to ourselves and getting to the point where you can go, I'm doing that thing again. I'm doing that imposter syndrome thing again. Right, what am I going to do differently to make myself not put myself in that place? But there is a huge scale for everybody about how they experience things. So there is no doubt there's a scale, but there's also, I think, Rob, other causes as well.
I think Gary Breen, Rob, has just explained it very well as well. The scale is mildly uncomfortable to utter panic.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That does make sense. Does make sense. I wonder, Rob, I wonder, Claire and Rob, if every single human being has some form of that self-doubt or imposter syndrome. It just maybe manifests itself in different ways. Maybe it's just one of those things we're all born with, but some are good at masking it, some are good at identifying it, some are very poor at doing it and get ill due to it. So I just wonder if it's something we all carry with us to some degree.
I would say so. That's probably. I mean, there are some, some people who never have a doubt in their minds, and I can't imagine how that must feel. Just I
wonder if
we're human, aren't we?
I wonder if Donald Trump has imposter syndrome.
Well,
no,
I doubt that very, very much. Yeah, there's yeah, let's not bring him into the conversation and bring the mood down.
No, I didn't want to spoil everyone's day there. Sorry about
that. I'm going to pick up some more of the chat points, but I just want to make sure, because time is flying by, I want to make sure that I do include some of the things that I wanted to sort of say, because I wanted to talk about what is imposter syndrome, kind of where does it come from and all those kind of things, but how can we cope with it as well? Again, I am not saying I'm an expert, because I feel like I'll be found out if I pretend to be an expert, even in imposter syndrome, which is quite paradoxical. But the ways that I have found that help me is all I can share with you. And some things that I've learned recently from podcasts that I will be implementing, which may be helpful as well. And I think that first one, and this is what I've got at the top of my list, is that it is absolutely normal. And we probably don't need to get too bogged down in why no, I don't mean that. No, scratch that. Do look at why you've got it. Because is it environmental? Is it something about external influences that are making you feel uncomfortable and unwelcome because of your gender or your race or anything else? Because that's not okay. That is not something that we should just be going, oh, well, everyone's got that. That's not okay. I'm rethinking this as I go. The thing that I keep saying in my head, my mantra to myself that does help, though, is you don't have to be the best to be good enough. I don't have to be the best at everything to be good enough at my job, to do my job. I have imposter syndrome in my personal life as well. I will always tell people I'm a terrible mother. And I have to remind myself, I don't have to be the cookie cutter perfect mother to be the best parent or the good enough parent to my kids. I don't have to be perfect to be good enough, because I get imposter syndrome all the time with the data protection side of it, especially people like John Baines, who he just reads everything and he absorbs everything and he has like really good insight. but I can still be really good at data protection and not be John Baines level. I don't have to be posting something really enlightening every day like Tim does. I can still be good at insight. I can still be good at data protection. I can still be passing on some nuggets, even if it's not 5 nuggets a week of really, really useful stuff. I don't have to be perfect or the best to be good enough. That's what I keep telling myself. And I'm really glad that Kate's coming along to places like this and talking to people, because I've got community in my list, that being open and talking to each other and realizing that Mike, who I think is amazing, I know is amazing, says he feels like, what? Mind blowing. Rob telling us about NHS consultants and doctors, and wow, okay. Those kind of things I think are really useful. The more we can talk about it and the more we can share. Although coming back to my previous point of let's not just normalize it too much and miss those environmental things. I love that people are talking about wins, and this is it. This is my biggie, that we have to keep reminding ourselves how far we've come, what we've learned. It's human nature that we recalibrate. Our brains just go back to normal. We kind of have a new normal. So every time we learn something, we make significant progress, we recalibrate that as normal. And so we kind of forget how far we've come. And we need to keep reminding ourselves, well, a year ago, you didn't even know that acronym existed, let alone knew what it stood for, or you couldn't have answered that question. Or 10 years ago, you didn't even know data protection was a thing. And now look at you. All these milestones, keep reminding yourself of them, the progress that you're making. Keep reminding yourself of them. We look at what we've got ahead of us, that I've got to get better. There's still so much to learn. And yeah, there might be, but we've also come a long way. And that's what I keep telling myself. And I'm just going to give you one last thing that I've found from a podcast recently. I think it was an Ali Abdaal podcast, who interestingly was a doctor and left, and he talks very openly about kind of all his he always thinks he's not good enough, and it's really, really interesting. So it was somebody talking about distancing from your thoughts. So the next time, I don't know, it wasn't imposter syndrome, it was like, I'm not good enough. So very closely related to a lot of imposter syndrome. So next time you find yourself thinking, I'm not good enough, the distance thing is to go, oh, I'm thinking to myself that I'm not good enough. And then you add another layer of distance. I can see Rob nodding, this is good. Another layer of distance is, I'm noticing that I'm thinking to myself that I'm not good enough. And it just puts that thought a little bit further away from you, that you can kind of mentally step back and not feel quite so connected to it, and not feel like you are that thought. Just that, oh, right, I'm noticing, I'm thinking I'm not good enough. It's over here now, rather than in my head. And I haven't tried that one yet. I said it was only yesterday, the day before, that I heard that. So I'm going to try that out. But Rob's nodding, so I think it's probably a good sign. Is that a good?
I'm allowed to comment on that. So in your brain, what you're doing is you're creating a gap. So we ingrained in us is all this stuff going on inside, which gives us imposter syndrome, and it comes back automatically all the time because our brains learn to do it. And when you start to put those extra words in, you're creating a delay. And what that allows is the rational bit of your mind, because when we're on autopilot, the rational bit doesn't come in. It's happening, and then I've got that feeling, I've got that thought. I'm an imposter. What it does is create a gap in that brain stimulus, and that slows down your mind slightly, which gives you a bit of your mind that rationalizes things to start rationalizing. So the more words you put in, the bigger the gap you get, and suddenly other bits of your brain start to go, oh, hold on a moment, perhaps we can do something differently with this. So yeah, it's a great technique, and there are multiple
Brilliant.
ways of doing that, but that sounds like a really good one. It's a mindfulness one by the sound of it. So brilliant.
Brilliant. Oh, thanks, Fab. I will report back and let you know how that goes. When I start using that. I'm going to jump in the chat because I've missed loads and loads and loads in here. I'm going back. Okay, so yeah, so felt less of an imposter in your old job as you knew the sector well and you've changed the sector, so you feel more of an imposter. But you do know what you're doing. I know you do know what you're doing. But you sometimes feel it's due to people are questioning you because they know it's not your background. I completely get that as well, that they're doubting the fact that you can bring your knowledge from one sector to another sector, and that is part of that external unwelcoming and unsupportive environment that isn't great. Isn't it amazing how it can only take one comment on a project you're working on, usually from someone who knows nothing about data protection, to knock your confidence? So true. Whatever your specialism area is, whether it's data protection or anything else, somebody just goes, really? Oh, okay. I was on a call earlier where somebody says, and do we like that phrase? I was like, oh, I did until you asked that question. And she was like, no, it's fine. I'm just double checking that that's what you want me, that's what we're calling this thing. I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. And yeah, she wasn't even trying to knock my confidence. It was that's where I go to. That's where I go straight to. And yeah, so right that it can be people who know less about it can sound much more confident than we can. And one item to explore is confidence. There we go. Brings us in perfectly. Self-criticism leads to problems when we're publicly challenged and have lasting effects on credibility. Mind your sources, absolutely. Be careful who we are listening to. Apprenticeship, data protection and information governance, every day is a battle. So you are on the apprenticeship, every day is a battle to remind yourself of how far you have come. It can be exhausting, but looking back is so rewarding. Imposter syndrome can be exhausting. I'm not reading very well today, sorry. But looking back is so rewarding, absolutely. And I know you, I know who you are, you absolutely do know your stuff. And we have got, oh, wow. You've been in your new sector for 14 years now, and you still feel you're new. Completely understand that as well. And again, because other people have been in that sector longer, like Georgina said earlier, people that have been, IRMS that have been doing their job for decades, well, I'll never catch up with that. All right, I'm like, I've only done data protection as a specialism for 12 years. And other people are like 20, 30, 40 years. It's like, yeah, but 12 years is still quite a lot. What you've done, 12 months is a lot if you've really jumped into it and really got into it. From law lecturer for 10 years into compliance last year. Recently decided to pivot to data protection and feel like an imposter. Well, you are not. You have got a huge set of skills there from what you've been doing that will absolutely stand you in a brilliant stead. Someone else came into data protection from customer service quality background to cover your DPO's maternity leave and never left. Working for a small organisation, your team turns their hand to anything and everything, including security questionnaires, which is definitely not your forte, but every day is a school day. And you go to security conferences to broaden your knowledge. Brilliant. Definitely experience imposter syndrome on a regular basis. And I know you have absolutely no need to. The old challenge of a prophet in their own land. Oh, very wise sounding there. Yes, that Sorry, I keep jumping to the next thing before I finish my thought. I have imposter syndrome. A couple of weeks ago, advised the organisation of a possible ICO reportable incident. Everyone disagreed, but you were adamant, and it felt good to know you were right. Brilliant. Stand your ground. Absolutely love it. I get made to feel like I don't know what I'm talking about by some senior colleagues. They're always looking for advice from external sources. Feel that so hard. And again, it comes back to that environmental, doesn't it? So the scale from Gary is from mildly uncomfortable to utter panic. And yeah, it doesn't help. Absolutely doesn't help when your senior colleagues are looking for external. Used to say I wasn't perfect, but I was perfect for the last charity I worked for. Yeah, we can be not perfect, but perfect for something. Perfect for our particular role. I wonder if it is our child in us. We had our parents to take advice and supply the right answers. When no longer present, we have an internal panic. I think this is normal in realising we have graduated. We know how to proceed. Oh, that's okay. Going a little bit deeper than I had expected. That's hit me there. That's really hit me. Yeah, very thought-provoking. Oh, Dave needs to scoot. Thank you. Tony's got to scoot. Two people talking to each other, a junior or department lead and expert, and both have imposter syndrome and don't realise. Absolutely, that must happen all the time. So the more we can talk about this, people keep quoting stuff and they're using the wrong legislation. Yeah, it's that little knowledge is a dangerous thing, isn't it? They're like, oh well, I've heard of GDPR. It means you need consent for everything, and they start spouting that at you really confidently, and it's not true. But it does make you go, oh, that right? I had it in the housing sector where tenants who are so confident in their rights that my favourite one that I talk about a lot was a tenant saying, you can't take me to court because I do not consent to you giving my data to the court. So you can't take me to court for eviction processes. And he was so confident that he had everybody at the landlord and some of the solicitors going, really? Is that right? Hang on a minute. Because he was so confident. And he wasn't right. I do miss tenants. Somebody who's left the housing sector. Is that sarcasm?
Might be. Made the day entertaining sometimes.
Well, yes, that's true. If I hear legitimate interest thrown randomly into conversation one more time, ... Yeah. Stepping outside of work. Yep. So as I was saying, I have this in my personal life as well with parenthood. I've done 27 park runs and feel massively inadequate seeing the runners with 250 on their t-shirts. Oh wow. You need to reframe. Tell yourself, I choose to do a mix of running and don't need to turn up every Saturday to prove yourself to yourself or to others. Absolutely. There'll always be someone who's run more, further or longer than me. I'm only competing against myself. I'm proud of what I've done. And so you blinking well should be. There will be people like me who are sound asleep while you are doing your park run on a Saturday morning and feel like imposters because they wouldn't know where to start with running. I know it should be straightforward, but I just wouldn't know where to start. Currently, somebody is currently a law lecturer, practiced and advised on data protection 20 years ago, always been interested in data, did the CIPPE and CIPM exams recently to try and help overcome your imposter syndrome. When considering data protection, not sure it has achieved the desired effect, but definitely agree that those in privacy are very happy to exchange ideas and thoughts, which is so refreshing. Yes, we are definitely a very, very nice community, I would say, in general. And housing is a great community, and I'm very lucky to have the overlap. And a lot of third sector in general, I think, is mostly full of lovely people. We are almost at an hour. Has anybody got anything else that you want to add, to add, to say, or to ask, or to give us your hints and tips? What else works for you? Interesting to hear that the exams perhaps didn't have the desired effect. Georgina.
I think the one thing that's helped me the most is finding your community, like find your tribe. There was actually one of the top tips I received when I went to the IOS conference last year and asking various people about what's your one piece of advice you would give to a newcomer to industry. And consistently everyone said, find your tribe, find your people, find a network of people that you can kind of lean on. So if you ever do have those thoughts of, I'm an imposter, I don't belong in this industry, speak to those people that you've built up around you. So for me, Claire's in my tribe. Like if I ever feel like an imposter, I can say, Claire, am I an imposter? Like, do I belong here? I can always reach out to Claire. And so I think that's my top tip I've received myself, and I would love to share that with you. Find your people and lean on them, because they'll be there for you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you reminded me actually that one of the things that I said as a top tip when we did the thing was to keep asking questions. And I got that from you, because the previous year, every single session that you were in, you always asked that brilliant question. What would be the top tip that you would give? So you went away with, and you gave a load of us that were listening in, amazing advice. So it's asking, it's listening, it's reframing. Somebody mentioned reframing. Mike.
I think the thing that's worked for me the most is to take a step back from what you're doing and look back at what you've done in the past and actually think, well, hang on a minute, I have done some good work.
Yeah.
Because you can get so ingrained in what you're doing, on a day-to-day basis, and the imposter syndrome creeps in, and you can get yourself into a real rut.
Yeah,
but
you get
for
stuck.
But for me, I found that just taking a step back and saying, hang on a minute, this is what I've done, and nobody said that it's really crap. So, I have to be objective and say, all right then. And also as well, I think we're all on a path, aren't we, in the work that we do? And I think there's always going to be experts ahead of you, but you're always going to be an expert to people that are behind you. So, like for the park run, if someone's done 250 park runs, they may be better than the person that's done 27, but that one who's done 27 is a lot better than somebody like me who's done 0. So to me, they're an expert, even though they may not think so. So I think taking a step back, I think, has helped me the most. Sure.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mike. Anybody else can share some top tips with us? Rob?
Not sure if they're top, but it's a tip anyway.
Or a tip, tips.
It's the other side of what Georgina said, in effect, which is Georgina talked about, being with your tribe, understand who your tribe are, get that really supportive input from those people. There's something about those people who would choose to undermine you, about assessing what value you want to give to what they say. So what's going on in that person's head? Because the comments they're making are not about you, actually. They're about them and their lack of confidence. They're about them and their lack of capacity to cope. So it's hard to do in the moment, but if you're reflecting on something which seems to be undermining you, who is that person? Is that person I want to carry what they've said to me with any weight? And it's a learned thing. You have to learn to do it, but it makes the difference. And it's the other side of having your tribe who also will give you that positive support as well. So that those two things combined together are great. And what Mike said was great. Step back. How often do we ignore all the great stuff we've done because somebody over there said one thing in one meeting?
Yes.
That's not where the value is. Where the value is what have I achieved? What am I capable of? What have I done? What do I know? What do I know about my limits? And who do I need to ask? Which is normally you, Claire, if I'm beyond the limits of my capability in data protection. So those are my two.
That's fantastic. Thank you. It's about the weight that we give to certain things, isn't it? And we're mismatching. We're giving far too much focus and weight to the negatives and not enough focus and weight to the positives. I definitely do that, and you can hear the cogs turning, can't you, in my head? So I'm okay, yes, I need to do that. Dashing off, but thank you so much for this session. Very thought-provoking and also quite comforting. Love that. We have got somebody with a tip: find someone to coach. Besides the reward, you'll see how much you do know. Beware, experience and longevity versus expertise are not the same. I love that. Find someone to coach and you will realise how much you do know. And of course, it's rewarding. That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that. And I think I'm going to end on that, because that is wonderful. And the whole thing that we've done here today, community, just absolutely brings it home to me. And that I have to keep reminding myself it doesn't have to be perfect to be good enough, because I'm about to launch a program which I keep trying to make it perfect before I launch it. But again, from podcasts I hear about people talking about the first iteration is always going to be not great. If you look back at how Amazon started, it wasn't all shiny and slick and everything like it is now. It has to grow. So we start where we are and we do what we can with where we are. Thank you so much, everyone.